We're learning the fourth Sicha in Parshas Bereishis and Chelek Tezvav on page 20. This is a Sicha on the Rashi in this week's Parsha regarding the carbon that Cain and Hevel brought and what happened mainly to Cain after Hashem did not accept his carbon. Beautiful, beautiful Sicha, both in Pshat and later in Halacha and also Al Pipnimis on Yonim. The Shir today is being learned Lil Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Kaltman. In Pasuk, Vayovei Cain mipri Adama minchal Hashem. The Pasuk says Cain brought from the produce of the land a carbon for Hashem. Stellt sich Rashi of the Werte mipri Adama. So Rashi stops on the words of the Pasuk where it says mipri Adama. What is it that he brought? One is mefarish, and Rashi explains Munagarua. He brought from inferior quality. V'yesha Goda. There's a medrash that tells us Shei Meres Zera Pishtanoya that what he brought was flax. So the hechrech from Rashi to learn as Cain had gebracht min hagerua. What's forcing Rashi to say that Cain brought from inferior quality? It's verstandig bepashtos itself understood. Wie der Ram is mevayer. The Ram explains dim loikein matam. If not that he brought from a bad quality, so then why ve'al Cain ve'al mulchasei leisha? Why did Hashem not turn to Cain and to his carbon? Hashem didn't accept his carbon, so it must be that he brought from a bad quality. The question, however, is was Rashi bringt der Agode azera pishtan. This that Rashi quotes from the Agode that he brought from pishtan, from flax. Lamay nafkemina im pshute shel mikra. What relevance is there in the simple pshat of the pasuk? Ti de minche min hagerua is given zera pishtan. Whether this minche which he brought from bad quality was from flax, or an ander min priyadama, or some other type of produce in the land. Why is it necessary for Rashi to bring this detail that the Medrash tells us that it was from Pishtan? Rashi only brings things from the Medrashim that are relevant for the Pshat of the Pasuk. Now you can't ask a stronger question here. Was is the Raya from Pshuta Shel Mikra Azera Pishtan Hoya? What is the proof from the simple Pshat of the Pasuk that it was from flax? Where does Rashi take this from? Weil. So that's not a question. Well, from them Gufa was Rashi bringt them inyan b'shem Agoda. Since Rashi is quoting this in the name of the Medrash, nit videm optaitshum min hagerua, not like what Rashi in the beginning says, that it was from inferior quality, was a schreibt nit von wann nemtes, and there Rashi does not say that he's quoting from the Medrash, chotch euch derin nicht steht in Agode, even though that too says in the Medrash, but there Rashi doesn't say he's taking it from Medrash, because for that there's a clear raya from the simple pshat of the pasuk. But over here Rashi makes it clear that he's taking it from the Medrash. So it's verstandig, it's understood as from Pashtus Aksuvim is taken nit mochach as hat gebracht zera pishtan. In the simple pshat of the pasuk there is no clear raya that the bad quality that he brought was from pishtan, from flax. And the market of them is nor from Agada. The source for this is only from the Medrash. Rashi bringt die Agada in sein Pirish ala Teire, but since Rashi quotes this Medrash and his pshat here in the Teire and Chumash, so we must say ados is beloshen Rashi an Agada hamiyasheves divrei mikra. So this is a Medrash which helps us understand better what it says in the pasuk. Das heißt, es ist da Schwierigkeit im pasuk. There's something difficult to understand in the pasuk. Was wird verämpft mit der Agada azera pishtanaya. And this is answered by the fact that what was brought was zera pishtan, that it was flax. So the question is, what is the difficulty that Rashi sees in the pasuk that by quoting this medrash, that the quality, the fruits or the produce that he brought was from flax, that was his carbon. In Kamet Fusim from Pirish Rashi, there are some prints of Rashi, steht noch zwischen Chatzah Yigel. Rashi continues, and it's quoted in the parentheses, Doveracher, a second pshat, Mipri, when it says that he brought from the produce of the land, and the pasuk does not specify which of the produce of the land. So that means me'ezeh shabal liyodeh. He took whatever came to his hands. Le'toiv v'lei mufcher. Not something good and not something especially chosen for this purpose, but whatever came to his hands, that's what he brought. So in other words, according to this pshat, he didn't necessarily take from gerua, from the bad quality, but just whatever came to his hands. Nafapi, as in the erste Drucken from Pirish Rashi ala Teire, steht nicht der Pirish. So now, in the earlier prints of Rashi ala Teire, we don't have this second pshat quoted. Is aber verstandig, but it's understood as euch der zweite Pirish hat an art. This second pshat also has a place here. And therefore there are those that do have this version that Rashi said, this second pshat. So if there is a second pshat here, so the question is as follows. Das was Rashi benugen sich nicht mit dem ersten Pirish, kann man sagen dem Tam. The fact that Rashi is not satisfied with the first pshat he quotes, that it was flax, so that we could explain, if we're going to say, as der Chet von Kain is given, das was hat gebracht von Garua, the fact that the produce that he brought for the carbon was from inferior quality, was the pasuk says him as hat gebracht ne pri o Adam? So why does the pasuk just plainly write that he brought from the produce of the land? Nit oisteiching dik dabei mea Garua, and not spelling out that the problem here was the fact that he took from the inferior quality. If that's the whole issue, as the pasuk continues, that his carbon wasn't accepted, so shouldn't the pasuk spell out what the problem was? Azoivi, the pasuk is mefared gleich by minchas hevel, similar to the way the pasuk specifies when it comes to the carbon that Hevel brought, that he brought from the first and from the best. So here as well, if Cain brought from the worst, so the pasuk should have said something. The Rebbe brings Rashi noch a pirish, but so therefore Rashi brings, according to this version, another pshat here, as the minche is take given nit min agarua. The carbon, the minche he brought, was not from inferior quality. Nor vilashon hakosov, rather, as the pasuk says, mi piri stam, he brought from fruits or from the produce of the land. Me'eze shabal liyadeh, from whatever came to his hands. Leitay v'lei mufcher, not something especially good or especially chosen. Und in dem Gufe is bestanden sein Chet. And this itself was the Aveda here, was that nit mit Daye gewend zu bringen, min atoiv ma mufcher. That he wasn't particular by bringing a carbon for Hashem to choose the best for a carbon. That's the second shot Rashi says there. But now, if so, it's very difficult to understand. On the other hand, it's understood according to the first pshat, as ein minche is given mina gerua, that his carbon minche was from the bad quality. Is verstandig. So therefore Hashem does not turn to Kain or to the carbon that he brings. Because bringing a carbon specifically from the worst quality is nit nor a beweis, as by im felt der kovet from the Meibischen. So this is not only a proof for the fact that he lacks the proper honor that should be given for Hashem when you bring a carbon, was is mechayiv, as the mincha soll sein, min atoy va'amufcher, as it's befitting, bringing a carbon for Hashem, that it should be from the best and from the chosen. Now nachme, this proves even more, dass es heipach ha-kovet, to choose the worst quality for Hashem is opposite of honor. Damit is me mevazet, so then when me bring the mincha, you're embarrassing the one that you bring the mincha, the carbon for, when you give him from the worst quality. So we could understand why Hashem didn't accept this and didn't turn to him at all, and later he was punished. However, how can we say, as the far was that nit mishtadel gewend zu bringen min atoyvim min amufcher, because he didn't make an effort to bring from the best and from something chosen, and he was just satisfied with bringing any carbon from whatever came to his hands. So the Rebbe in ganzen nit annehmen Kain's minche, Hashem should not accept this carbon at all. That Hashem does not turn to the carbon at all. He's bringing something which was appropriate, to some extent. In other words, he's not focusing dafka on embarrassing and bringing something that is not proper at all. He's bringing whatever he had, whatever came to his hands. Is this a reason that Hashem should not at all turn to his carbon? That's the question on the second pshat here in the Rashi. The Yeshloima, the Bir and Dem. So we can explain that the pshat in this second pshat that Rashi says there is as follows. Rashi kann sich nicht banugenen mit dem Pirish min agarua. Rashi cannot just stick to what he says in the beginning, that Cain brought from inferior quality, weil das ist kosher b'yoser, because this is very difficult to understand. Mit seinem bringen die Minche, when Cain is bringing a Minche, is Cain given Eisen a Reiseweisen a Dankbarkeit zum Eibischen. His point was to express thanks to Hashem for the produce that Hashem has given him. That's the point of a carbon. Heint wie kommt es, as soll bringen dafke mina gerua? So how is it possible that while he's trying to express thanks to Hashem, he should choose to bring from the worst quality for this? Was es heipach amachovim fun de mincha? Which is the exact opposite point of what he's trying to do with this mincha, to express thanks to Hashem, and instead he brings something which is only embarrassing. So it's very difficult to understand what this means, that Cain brought Nipri Adama from the worst quality. Zois va'oid, this question, and even furthermore, nachdem, wie Kain hat gesehen, as vel Mechase lo isha. After Kain saw that Hashem did not turn to his carbon. Steht in Pasuk, the Pasuk there says, Vayichale Kain ma'oid, Kain was extremely angry, Vayiplu ponav, and he was down about this. It's tamua, so this is very difficult to understand. Nachdem wie hat gebracht sein Minche, dafke min hagerua, after he himself went and specifically chose the worst quality, an embarrassing carbon for Hashem, hat then devart, as the Minche soll jenes kabel werden. He was expecting that it should be accepted, and therefore he is shocked and disappointed that Hashem did not accept his Minche. Why is he all angry about this? He chose to bring an embarrassing Minche. Of course Hashem is not going to turn to this. So therefore, Muslim Zogin, we must say, as Chotch, Kain's Minches gewen azah, was es nit wert skabel werden. Kain brought a Minche, was not worthy to be accepted. Is aber fort, gewen anort, as Kain soll hatas haben, und meinen, but nevertheless, we must explain that Kain himself could have had a mistake and thought, as sein Minche darf skabel werden lerotzen. That his carbon Minche should and has to be accepted, and should be pleasing for Hashem. There's a reason why Kain was thinking so. Das is Rashi Masbir mefarish at zwei fanim. This is why Rashi does not stop after he says Mina Garua, and he continues and brings the Medrash. One shot is, as the Mincha is Aleph Zayin Mina Garua. Yes, it was from bad quality, but Zera Pishtan Hoya. However, it was from flax. And Beis, and then according to other versions, another pshat, as he is nit given min agerua, that he didn't bring from inferior quality, nor me'ezeh shebali yadai leitoiv le'mufchar. He took whatever came to his hands, not good, not chosen. Kidla kaman, as the Rebbe will explain soon, what Kain exactly was thinking by bringing this carbon, and why he was expecting that Hashem should accept it, and why he got disappointed. As will be explained later, this is coming in Seif Hey. But before the Rebbe gets to the details of this, the Rebbe first stops and says, based on this approach and understanding that Kain had an expectation that his carbon should be accepted, so the mit wird euch gerecht werden, akashye and seder aksuvim. With this, we can answer a question in the order of the Psukim. How does it tell us the story about Kain and Hevel that brought each one respectively their karbanis for Hashem? Friya state, so first the pasuk says, "Vayave Kain goyme michal Hashem," that Kain, that is, brought his carbon. And danach is the pasuk mamshech, and then the pasuk continues and says, "Vehevel hevi gam hu goyme." Hevel as well brought a carbon, and Vayisha Hashem el Hevel goyme, and Hashem turned and accepted the carbon of Hevel. Und erst danach steht, only after this does it say, Vel Kain, Vel Mulchase, Lo Isha, that to Kain and to his Mincha, Hashem did not turn, and Vayicha Goyim, Hashem was angry. So the question in the order of the Psukim here is, Haben die Werte, Vel Kain, Goyim, Lo Isha, these words that Hashem did not turn to the carbon of Kain, Gedav Stein, Gleich, Nochen Sippor, Vayave Kain, Mincha Hashem. This should have said immediately after it says the story that Kain brought his carbon. Then it should say he brought his carbon, and his carbon was not accepted. Before you go on to tell the story about Hevel's carbon and that it was accepted. Why is it first saying that Hevel brought a carbon as well, and his carbon was accepted, and then come back to Kain to say that his carbon was not? Even if you'll say, as the pasuk will freer the tzelen wegen beide havois haminches. First, the carbon, the pasuk that is, wants to relate both of the carbonis that were brought, and then afterwards to tell us the result of how Hashem accepted both of these karbanis. So that would be sort of a proper order of how the pasuk is presenting the story. But still, it should have first said, Vel Kain Goymer Loisha. Since Kain is the one that brought first, so first the pasuk should tell us the result of his carbon that Hashem did not accept. And danach, Vayisha Hashem a level, that Hashem did accept Hevel's carbon. Behesem zum Seder von die Havois, corresponding to the order of how the karbanis were actually brought. So what's the explanation for the order of the psukim? Pashtus kemen zogin. So simply we can answer and say as follows. Das is the far that the reason why the pasuk says that in this order, weil erst nachem vayisha Hashem el Hevel, only after Hashem turned and accepted Hevel's carbon, which was yarda eish v'lichacha min chasei, that a fire came down from heaven and consumed his carbon that he brought. Had Kain the field, now Kain sensed from them was by him is lo yarda eish chulu. So now he noticed and he saw the fact that for his carbon a fire did not descend from heaven, as v'milchasei leisha, that Hashem did not turn to his carbon. So therefore it's only now that Cain got angry. Up until this point he didn't notice at all that there's something unique about the fact that there's no fire coming down from heaven. After our fire came down from Hevel, now he noticed that he did not get accepted. However, based on what the Rebbe explained before, so we can say another pshat, a deeper pshat here, what the pasuk is saying. As the mit meant the pasuk to merame sein, by delaying, telling us this, that Cain's carbon was not accepted, what the pasuk is hinting to is as follows: as the emerser vel Cain geimer loisha, that this, that truthfully speaking, this that Hashem did not turn to the carbon of Cain is ersh geven nochen vayisha Hashem level. This is not when Cain brought his carbon and then Hashem did not turn to him. It's only after Hevel brought his carbon, it's now that Hashem did not turn to Cain. And the Rebbe here is not referring to the point that he just said, that it was only noticeable at this moment. But rather, the actual fact that Hashem does not turn to Cain is only after Hashem does turn to Hevel. Why is this? When Cain brings his minche, is noch gewen a mokim l'tos. So at that point, Cain had a mistake, or he had a certain expectation, as the din is nitokin, that the way he brought his carbon, there was nothing lacking. Kanal, as the Rebbe said before, and it will be explained soon in detail, that Cain had a certain understanding that his carbon that he brought was perfect. So he was expecting Hashem to accept it. Now what happens? Noch, then wie Cain hat gesehen, as Hevel hat gebracht, mit Bcheiris Zainai Mechalbein. That now he sees Hevel brings from the best of his cattle. Und the far vayisha Hashem geimer, and therefore Hashem turns to the carbon of Hevel. Und bei ihm is das nicht gewesen. And he sees that Hashem does not turn to his own carbon. So now, hat doch klar gesehen, at this point, it should be clear for him to see, as Jan Hageseine is given nit boy, that what he did, the carbon that he brought was not appropriate. So at this point, he should have noticed that he made a mistake, and he should have corrected this and brought a better carbon. Und von deswegen hat euch dann nicht geraten gehabt und nicht getan etwas zum Missaken sein die Anhage. Even at this point, he didn't go and do something to correct his behavior, and he did not bring another carbon durchbringen a zweite minche mit a teufe mit a mucher v'chayetze bezeh, to go and bring another carbon from the best and from the chosen and similar. That was really the problem. The Far is erst dann die Teire madgish, die Teitzah von dem Chet. Now the Teire is emphasizing the result of this Aveda. That Hashem does not turn to Cain's carbon, because even though Cain originally thought that what he did is right, and he had reason to believe so, and therefore it wasn't expected of him to know any better. I mean, after all, this is the first carbon mentioned in the Torah being brought. Hevel, his brother, brought a carbon, and now he sees that Hevel's carbon is accepted and not his. This should have opened up Cain's eyes to realize that he made a mistake, and he had a chance to correct it. It's this point that he did not correct it. Now, here's what the pasuk says: that Hashem does not turn to Cain. So the pasuk is written perfectly in order. There's another remez here of another chet of Cain of not correcting the mistake he made in the beginning. So now to come back and explain the details of what Rashi says, the carbon of Cain. So it was explained many times. Rashi wrote his Pirish al Teire even for a 5-year-old. Which is just beginning to learn the Psukim and Chumash. Is the form verstandig. So from this we understand, as when Rashi sagt, Zera Pishtan Hoya, when Rashi says that Cain brought from flax, und is the Beinet Mazmit, mit was Pishtan is ausgeteilt, Lamal Yusuf, und andere Priyadama. And Rashi does not explain what is the advantage that there is to flax over other produce of the land. Is es weil der Ben Chomesh veis shoin wegen dem? It's because the 5-year-old already knows about this from what he learned before. Ukipirish Rashi frier, and this is actually based on what Rashi told us earlier. Oifim Pasik, Shem, Ho'echad, Pishain, when it speaks about the various rivers that came out from the Gan Eden, so there it says the first one, its name was Pishain, Taicht Rashi in Zweiten Pirish, so Rashi there explains in his second pshat, as meruft dem nar mit namen Pishain. This name of Pishain is Shehu Megadol Pishtan, because it brings to grow flax. That's what Rashi explains about the name of this river. The fun was anar. So from the fact that this river, und the Tzunach the Erste, this first river that the Torah speaks about in the beginning of creation, Wird angerufen als Shema Pishtan. It gets a name because of the flax that grows. Was is megadol. Is verstandig, so it's understood as Pishtan is a dova choshev b'yoser. That flax is something which is very, very significant, something which is very choshev, something which is very expensive, and something which is very good quality produce. Rabbi says, and now based on this, is move on, that Kesokedaita from Cain beim bringen sein Mincha. What Cain was thinking when he brought his Mincha, that Hashem would accept it. By him is gekommen. What he was thinking is as follows. As der Iker is Negeya, the main thing that's important is der Mina Mincha was bebrengt. That the type that he's bringing, that he's choosing to bring from, that should be something from good quality. Amin versus the toivu mufchar shebe minim, to choose from a type that's the best amongst produce that grows. Und der Far hat ausgeklippen Pishtan. So therefore he chooses to bring from the flax. Versus adava choshev umeshubach, because the flax is something which is very important and something which is very praiseworthy. In other words, it's something which is amongst the produce in the land. It's something which is very special. That he understood and that he chose. Aber in dem min gufe, in this min itself, hat gebracht min gerua. From this he brought from the worst quality of the flax. So yes, the best type of what grows in the land, but in this he brought from the worst. Und das gewähnt the Yisrael von Minchas Hevel. And that was the advantage of the carbon that Hevel brought. Was in dem min, was hat gebracht, sein Minche, from the type that he chose to bring his carbon, hat ausgeklippen mit becheires seine und bechalbei hen. Even from the type that he chose, he didn't take from the inferior quality of what it is, but he took from the best of it. That was what the advantage of Hevel. So this is the first pshat, the way Rashi explains it. So this answers the obvious question in the pasuk: how is Cain getting so disappointed by Hashem not accepting his carbon if he's bringing from Garua, from the worst quality? So the answer is he actually brought from the best type, the quality of the best type, but in that itself from the worst quality. Aber, however, der Pirish is nechaltznet move on. Even this explanation of Rashi is still not understood. The Mimanavshach, either way you look at it, it's difficult to understand. Wie bald as Cain hat gesucht mahade sein zu bringen von a besseren min. If he's actually trying as most possible to do it as the best, to be mahade, to bring from the best type for the carbon, so why in this min that he chose, the best of the minim, which is the flax, did he choose to bring from the inferior quality? So now this question on the first pshat of Rashi is not a very strong question. The pasuk is denach mamshech, and we can understand this from what the pasuk later says. The Eibusha tells Cain lepesach chatos reivetz ve'lecha tushukasei, that at the entrance your aveda will be crouching there, ve'lecha tushukasei, and there is where your desire will be. So this refers to what? As the Yetzer Hara hat sich da reingemischt. The Yetzer Hara got involved in what he was doing. He saw him bringing a carbon, and the Yetzer Hara came and convinced him not to bring the best. And therefore he caused him to stumble and take, yes, from the best quality, from the best type quality, to take from the flax, but the Yetzer Hara convinced him to take from the Gerua, from the worst. Aber in dem Gufe, however, if you look in the words of the pasuk, when it describes the involvement of the Yetzer Hara, so the Eibusha tells Cain lepesach chatos reivetz. I mean, the simple pshat of the pasuk there actually means, as Rashi says, that even when you're at the entrance of your cave, of your grave, that is, not cave, sorry, at the entrance of your grave, nevertheless, the aveda that you did, if you will not do tshuva, your aveda will be crouching right there. But the Rebbe is medayik, is as given an anoifim from the pesach chatos reivetz. The Yetzer Hara is only at the entrance. The Shlita from Yetzer Hara is given an anoifim from the Pesach. The Yetzer Hara is only there at the entrance in Dreisen. He's on the outside. Which means, hat nit gekent peilen, as Cain soll en ganz nit bringen kein Minche. He couldn't convince Cain to not bring a Minche to thank Hashem altogether. Oder bringen al kolpanim min agarua b'minim. Or even if he's going to bring a Minche, the Yetzer Hara could not convince Cain to bring from the worst quality. Of the type, to choose from the worst type, that is. He caused Cain to stumble partially. As soll Yetzer sein mit bringen von a besseren min bechlal, that he should be satisfied with this, that he's bringing from a better type, from the flax, but from the inferior quality of that type. However, in order to even bring this and explain it in an even smoother way, so according to some versions, we have another pshat here in Rashi. And the pshat is, mipri, when it says in the pasuk, he brought from the fruit or from the produce, it means, me'eze shabal yadai, he took from whatever came to his hands, not the worst, but also not from the best or from something that's chosen. Was like them pirish. So now according to this pshat is muvam bepashtus. So it's very simply understood. Favas kain had gemeint as a Rebishter vet onem as mincha. Why he expected that Hashem should accept his mincha? He's bringing a acceptable carbon. He takes whatever he gets and he brings. So that should be acceptable. Und das was vel mulchase vel kain vel mulchase loisha. And this that the pasuk says that Hashem in the end did not actually turn to his carbon is the far. The reason really is was euch später is because even later nachdem vi hevel hevi gam geimer mit bchayres seine geimer and vayisha geimer, that even after Hevel did bring from the best, so now this should have opened up Cain's eyes, even if originally he didn't have the understanding that Hashem is deserving to bring and choose from the best. But after he sees that Hevel did bring from the best, so that he should have learned from this to bring from the best, Cain did not regret what he brought, and he wasn't interested in correcting his actions, his behavior. And that's why Hashem did not accept what he brought. But originally, what he brought, he didn't know any better. And he thought that this is acceptable. So this is the second shot of Rashi, which explains even better the expectation of Cain in bringing this carbon that Hashem would accept it. However, even this explanation over here is also difficult to understand. And actually, is actually more difficult to understand than the first interpretation. This does not. And in most versions, this does not appear in Rashi. Because it's not logical to say just because Cain brought the carbon, plainly taking what he has from his produce and bringing, and not being particular to choose from the very best, that Hashem should not at all accept his mincha. Hashem turns away from him. How could that be? Und der Fahr muss man ankommen zum friedigen Pirish, and therefore we need the first pshat of Rashi, und im Stellen als Pirish Rishon ve'ikri, and this is the first and main pshat of Rashi says here, that he actually brought from the best type, from the flax, but from the flax itself, he brought from the inferior quality, and therefore Hashem did not accept his carbon. So now we have over here the pshat in the Rashi, in the Pshuta Shel Mikra, of what happened, what Cain's attitude was, what his expectation was. And what Hevel did, Hevel brought from the best, from the type that he chose. He actually brought the very best quality of that type. That was the chiddush of Hevel. Now the phone kommt arais dinyanim ufloim al derech ha'alacha shebepirish Rashi. So this brings us to wondrous ideas, which is ideas of halacha that we find in Rashi. Aninyan versus mevayer adiyah kaloshin and Rambam. So this will explain the very particular expression that the Rambam uses when he talks about this subject of bringing from the best for a carbon. The Rambam paskint. The Rambam says as follows: a person that wants to have a schus for himself or to refine himself, so bringing karbanim in ayofe hameshubach b'yosei, should bring the carbon from the best, the most praiseworthy, shabaisi amin, that he has in that type, sheyavi mimenu, that he's bringing from it. Bringt ruft den pasuk. And he quotes the pasuk over here in this week's parasha that we're speaking about here, Kol Chelev Lashem, that Hevel brings, he brings the pasuk that says in Parashas Vayikra that you bring the best from the fats to Hashem, Unal Tzraya, and then he brings another proof, and here he brings from what it says in this week's parasha, VeHevel Hevi Mibchayres Seine Mechalbeyen Vayisha Hashem, that Hevel brought from the best and from the first from his cattle, and that's what Hashem turned to. This is the Rambam. Now, from Diya Kaloshin, if you look particularly into what the Rambam says here, bring from the best of that type that you're bringing. Is mashma. So from this it seems as that inyan from Kol Chelev Lashem. This halacha of bringing from the best for Hashem meint nor the meshubach mufcher from dem min was the mensch will bring it. To bring the best, the chosen from that type that you choose to bring, that you decide to bring. Aber nicht, as soll auskleiben euch den besten min, was kann bringen. But the Rambam does not say that one should choose from the best type. The type that you decide that you want to bring, from this, you should bring the best quality. But which type is it that you're going to bring from? Over here, we're talking about animals. You want to bring from sheep, or you want to bring from ox, or whatever it is. That's not something that is part of this obligation to bring from a bigger animal. And similar to this, we also find when it comes to the halacha of somebody that makes a neder to bring a carbon, as a neder stam, someone that makes a vow to bring a carbon and doesn't specify, maybe so he brings from the biggest or from the best of the animals in that type that he said in his vow. And the example is Nadar Oila min bakar. He says he's going to bring a Oila from bakar. Now bakar refers to large cattle. So then Yavi Shai, he has to bring an ox. Onit ken egel, and not a calf. So from the type that he said in his neder, bring the biggest and the best. They're mufchar and them in shenadar. Aber oichan osher, however, on the other hand, even a rich person, meglachat chilim and neder zayin a billigerin. Even a rich person he can go ahead and right in the beginning, without this is not a bidiyeva, he can go and be menadiv, that is, make a vow to bring something that's much smaller than this. Even to bring a carbon oila, even from a bird. Biz as a filarad gesagt, harei alai oila stam. And the halach is a person that makes a neder, I will bring an oila, and he says it plainly without specifying. Und es ist derach anshe am Mokaim zu anrufen euch oila sa'oif, oila stam, and the people in that place, it's their custom. When they say oila, it refers to oila sa'oif as well. Can I bring an oila sa'oif? He can bring an oila from a bird, and he doesn't have to bring from a different type, from an animal or even from an ox and so on. So the question here is, how do we explain this? Kol chaylev la Hashem, when the pasuk says to bring the best for Hashem, is l'chayre koilel oichtem chaylev mufchar fun di minim was me kan bringen. Seemingly, that includes also the choice that you have from which type you're going to bring to choose from the best type. So why do we say here? Why is the Rambam saying as kol chaylev l'Hashem meint nor be'oisei yamin sheyavi mimenu? That this means that the min that you choose, that's your choice. You don't have to choose necessarily the best min, but then from that min that you chose, bring the best quality. Why is it so? So based on the way we explained what Hevel did as opposed to Kayin, we can understand. As the Rambam learned this up from carbon Kayin Hevel. The Rambam is learning this from what happened by the carbon of Kayin and Hevel. Was bringt in der Halacha als Raya Bechlal if the Kanal, as the Rambam brings the carbon of Hevel as a Raya to the Halacha that he says here. So what do we see here? Von dem was Hevel hat gebracht sein Minche von dem Mufcher mit Pcheiris und Michalbein. He brought from the best in them min fun sein. So he's bringing from the sheep, and from those sheep he brought the best. That's what it says. Und hat nit mahade gewen, but Hevel was not particular to bringen von a chosheveren min a bakar. He didn't bring from the min a bakar, which is large livestock, to bring from an ox, from an even larger animal. He took from the small animals a lamb, but the best of that type. And in the reverse, what do we see? Kayin chooses to bring from the best type, pishta, from the flax. And from the flax itself, he brings from the worst quality. And the result is, Hashem turns to Hevel. And to Kayin, Hashem does not turn at all. Even though, in a certain aspect, he's also bringing the best from the best min, but Hashem does not turn to him at all. Is the funai chache? So this itself proves as kol chaylev la Hashem that this halacha of bringing the best is mechayiv to bring him in a yofe hameshubach beyose sheba oisay amin sheyavi mimenu. This only refers to bringing from the best quality of what you choose, of the min that you choose. But bringing from the best min, is not at all relevant. If you're going to bring from the best min, that doesn't make it any better. Hashem will not turn to the carbon at all, as it was in the case of Kayin. But from the min that you choose to bring, you have to bring from the best. And this is where the Rambam learns out this halacha, that the halacha of kol chaylev only applies to the best of what min you choose to bring from. However, das Gufe darf man verstehen. This itself has to be understood. My time, what's the reason? In was besteht the Meile in was besteht die Meilas ha-minche men ha-yafa ha-meshubach be-yese she-be-oise yamin legabe ha-minche men ha-mufche she-beminim. Why is there a much bigger advantage to bringing the best quality of that min that you choose than bringing from the best min? Even if it's not from the best quality of that min, but bringing from the best min. Why is the main focus that doesn't matter really which min you bring from, but as long as you bring from that min you choose from the best? So this can be explained as follows. This idea of bringing the best for a carbon for Hashem, what's really the point over here? So we can explain it as follows. As der mit anerkennt der Mensch as Lashem haaretz u'maloya. The main point of bringing the best carbon for Hashem, we're not just speaking about bringing a carbon for another human being, that it should be pleasing for him, that you're going to bring him the best. But the main point over here is that the person bringing the carbon should have the recognition by bringing this carbon that the whole world belongs to Hashem. As als gehört zum Eibishten. Everything is Hashem's. Und der Fahr geht ab dem Eibishten von die erste und beste, was vermogt. And therefore he gives Hashem from the very first and from the best that he owns, because he knows that it all belongs to Hashem. That's what a person is expressing by a carbon in general, and especially when he's giving the best. Und wie bald das Lashem haaretz u'maloya is koilel alt was is da in Welt. When we say that the whole world and everything that's in it belongs to Hashem, so it includes everything in the world. Sai minim yafim u'meshubachim, both beautiful and better quality, better minim, better types of things that grow or exist in the world amongst the animals. Sai minim pshutim chulu, and also from the more simple and lower quality of minim that there are in the world are all created and belong to Hashem. The far, so therefore, is kol chelev la Hashem. This halacha of bringing the best, nit kein inyan was batzit sich nar to the minim shabachim. This is not applying only to bringing the best type, that one should just ignore the quality of the types that are lower quality and bring just from the best min. All minim belong to Hashem. Because if you're only going to bring from the best minim, so what does that mean? Was dann sagt sich nicht heraus die Akkare von dem Eibishens Balabatischkeit in jeden min in the Bria. If you never bring from a lower and simpler quality of a min, so then what you're basically saying is that it's only the best that belongs to Hashem. But the simpler and more basic quality of minim, that does not belong to Hashem. You never bring from there. So we don't want to make a limitation to say that kol chelev means specifically to bring from the best min. The point is to express that everything from all minim belong to Hashem. Additionally, if you bring only from the best min, it would come out as somebody that does not have better qualities of minim, that is. He only has things that are from lower quality minim. Kanet mekayim and kachel Hashem does not have the ability to bring from the best, because he does not own from the best minim. So rather, what is the obligation of kol chelev Hashem? Der chiv is to geben dem Eibishten min hayofe hameshubach b'yaser shebeoise hamin. From whichever min it is that you're bringing, because all minim belong to Hashem. From whichever min you choose, from there choose the best. Von jedem min, was der Ried will bringen, whichever min it is you want to bring from for a carbon, was the mid beweist, which this you express as jede Sach, von alles was gehört, was hat gehört zum Eibishten. From anything and everything you own, from all minim, it all belongs to Hashem. So therefore the main focus is to bring from the best of the min that you choose to bring from the best of that. This is the approach of Hevel, so we can now understand that the difference here between Cain and Hevel, the mistake that Cain made, it wasn't Stam Mamish, such an Aveda, that he was such a Rasha, that he just brought the worst, as it would seem when you read Rashi. According to what the Rebbe explained to us here, comes out that the mistake, the difference between Cain and Hevel, they were both trying to bring the best. But in Cain's approach, he's bringing the best min. And he thought that that's expressing the real Hashem Haaretz U'maloya. But he didn't realize, but if you only bring from the best min, so then you're not including everything in the world in the Hashem Haaretz U'maloya. So Hevel got it right. Hevel took whichever min he took. He only took from tzayin, which is not the best min amongst animals, but from that itself, he took from the very best min. That expresses fully that Hashem Haaretz U'maloya, that from all minim, everything belongs to Hashem. Now, coming to explaining the attitude of Cain and the difference between Cain and Hevel, according to Chassidus, Al Pi Pnimi Yisanyanim, the Rebbe will give us a beautiful understanding of these two approaches of the Karbanis here. Al PNL wird man euch verstehen, dem Tam, a Pnimi, was kein hat nicht ausgeklippen sein Mincha von dem Mufchische Bereishis. We can understand the deeper reason of Pichsidis, why it is that Kain did not choose to give from the very best quality from the min that he chose. Nor blois amin am Mufchar Pishtan. He just took from the best type from the flax. The Alter Rebbe is Mevayer in Lekutei Torah. The Alter Rebbe explains in Lekutei Torah as carbon Kain from Zera Pishtan, that this that Kain chooses to bring from flax is bedugmet to the big day bad Pishtim Lavan from Kohen Gadol b'Yom HaKippurim. It's similar to the garments that a Kohen Gadol wears on Yom Kippur, which is made from the flax. That these garments that are made from flax hint to a world where Hashem's unity is present there. Und der Inyan Achdus vom Bad, this unity that you have in the Bad, in the flax that grows, was ein Smiche is an Aneifen von Kone Yechidi Mikol Garen. From each seed that you plant, there's just one stalk that grows. So it grows alone, representing this Achdus of Hashem. Is nicht der Inyan von Achdus min Pirut. This is not a level of unity in a place where there is separation and various different types. Al derech vid daled minim shebelulav, similar to the idea of achdus that there is regarding the daled minim, the mitzvah of lulav. Vazei inyan achdus is nor vas gedelim ba'achva. The expression that it brings regarding the aravis is that they grow in brotherlyhood. Chayetze bezeh, or other aspects of the achdus of the daled minim, which is achdus in a place where you have multiplicity and you introduce achdus there. Their growth is divided and separated. Nor rather an inyan from yechidi be'etzem. The way the flax grows is each stalk separately. So therefore it shows on singular growth, that it grows with yechidi be'etzem, a level of Hashem's oneness which is completely separated and negates completely any level of division or separation altogether. That's what the bad represents, and therefore the garments of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur was made from this bad, from flax. Now, wie bald as Kain hat gewollt mamshich sein beginnes Yochid Shalamaylam is Chalkas Apratim. Kain, by bringing his carbon, really wanted to bring into the world Hashem's absolute unity that's higher than any divisions and any details. Is him defined gewenne gay to bring in the mufchische Bereishis min, so therefore it wasn't important to him to bring from the best quality in this type that he chose. Was das bringt heraus as es is da as chalkus. By choosing the best quality of this min of flax, that actually would have made the point that there are various grades of this quality that he's choosing here. There's mufcher, there's the best, there's stam, there's what's plain, there's gerua, there's inferior. Und wie bald as Reibishter is the balabais of jede min sheba'olam, kanal sivches. So since Hashem is the balabas, he's the owner and the master of everything that exists in the world, brengt der hamufcher. So therefore Kain chooses to bring from the best of all the minim. So he chooses the flax, and this flax represents the absolute unity of Hashem. And now there's no reason to decipher between best and not best. It's all just the absolute unity of Hashem. However, is this not given kafia kavana? This is not what Hashem's intention is. There was a mistake here. Because the ultimate purpose of Hashem is nit azay the hegesh ha'achtus from the meibishn in the beginning from Yachid. It's not sensing the unity of Hashem on the level of Yachid, which is the absolute unity of Hashem. Was is mechayev to sein ausgetan von inyanei ha'olam, which brings a person to remove himself of all matters of the world. It's a level of achtus which is removed of the details of existence in the world. Was dann kommt eis, as wenn man lost sich herab in Welt, reißt man sich ab von Achdusi Yisbarach. Because then what that would mean is, the moment you enter back into the world, you're actually tearing yourself away from the unity of Hashem. Nor rather, that inyan von echad. The absolute unity of Hashem is expressed even to a greater extent in the word echad, which means was es mechayev wegzugeben zum Eibischen dem Yafe hameshubach b'yoseh sheba oiseh min sheyavim mimenu kanal barucha, that one should actually choose whichever quality min he chooses. That doesn't matter. But from that min itself, find from the best quality. Here, you're revealing the unity of Hashem within creation itself, within the existence of creation itself, not just by removing yourself, by bringing this stalk that grows in a unique way, different than everything else. This is also a lesson in everybody serving Hashem. How much everyone should be careful in beautifying a mitzvah. Ma doch Kain, if it comes to Kain, was hat gehalten beim Hergish von Pchines Yachid Pishtan. He was sensing this absolute unity of Hashem on the level of Yachid, like the Pishtan. Und nachher Kain, and yet, wie bald, es hat ihm gefällt, in dem Hidde zu bringen, min amufchische Beise Min. He was missing the Hidde to bring from the best of that Min, is danach herabgefallen lamata. So he fell, and he later had a downfall. As anstatt dem, was Minchas Hevel hat ihm gedacht bringen zu, kina seifrim tarba chachme, what should have been later the result, as the Rabbi explained earlier in the Sicha, after Cain noticed that Hevel's carbon was accepted, so this should have brought him to understand Marbe sein in sein Milche, that he should have brought again, and he should have added to his carbon, Mizas sein in here, Beide Miles. So he should have now in his carbon both advantages. Sai from Minam Shubach Pishtan, to bring from the best quality, which is from the flax, and Sai the Mufcha Minzeh, and also to bring from the best of this min itself. Is that Achman al-Tzlan had abgefallen, so he had a downfall in a kinne, he became jealous, bis vayokim Kain al-Hevel, and he came and he went and killed his brother. So Allah has come with a comment, most definitely, by jederin von uns, by everybody, as medaf gesede kletteren, hecher avodas Hashem, a person has to constantly climb higher in serving Hashem. V'yene was klettert auf a berg, like someone that's climbing up a mountain. Was oibe soll sich abstellen, lerege kotten, kennen Achman al-Tzlan abfallen. If you stop in the middle climbing a mountain, even for one moment, you can fall. Und meise sein geseder in hidden mitzvah, to constantly add and beautifying a mitzvah, as jeder inische begdusha soll sein, men ad no, va toiv, biz, men a yofe, va to always bring from the best, from the beautiful and the most praiseworthy quality. Und wenn Yid geht weg, sein Bestes zum Eibishter, when a Yid gives away from his best for Hashem, zahlt him up der Eibishter, Hashem will pay him back, mit kol tuv gashmi v'ruchni, with all the best and good, both physically and spiritually, miyadei, hamleya, hapsucha, hagdoisha, varchava, from Hashem's full, open, holy, and broad hand.